Before we start this heartwarming story, let us know where are you watching from in the comment box. And if you enjoy this beautiful story, then subscribe for more heartwarming stories. Ethan Cole had everything a man could want. The penthouse view, the black car with leather seats, the corner office with walls made of glass. He had the power to make things move with a signature. He could buy anything, watches, yachts, islands. But he couldn't buy peace. He couldn't buy sleep. And on that cold Tuesday in March, he couldn't buy a ride either. The skies over Manhattan were angry that night. Rain fell like it had been holding back for weeks. Umbrellas turned inside out. Taxi lights disappeared into puddles. Ethan, in his $1,000 suit, found himself standing in a bus shelter, alone until she showed up. She rushed in, soaked to the bone, carrying a paper bag that was falling apart at the bottom. Her shoes made soft squeaks on the pavement. Her coat was too thin for the weather, but she smiled like the rain didn't bother her, like the night was just fine, like she belonged in it. He glanced at her, expecting the usual recognition, the double take, the wide eyes. None came. She nodded politely and opened the bag to check if the pie inside had survived. "Hope you weren't waiting long," she said casually. Her voice was like honey and gravel, soft but grounded. "I've been waiting a while," he replied, half smiling. "But I think I was supposed to." She raised an eyebrow. "Supposed to?" "Yeah," Ethan said. "If I'd caught the ride I wanted, I wouldn't have met you." She laughed, genuinely, not a polite laugh, not a fake one, a real belly-deep laugh. It surprised him. It charmed him. It cracked something in his chest. He noticed her name tag then. Grace. Simple, elegant, fitting. "Grace," he said, testing the name on his tongue. "You always repeat people's names like that?" she teased. "Only when I think they're worth remembering." She grinned. "You're smooth." "Some say that," he replied. "You disagree?" "I think you're used to people being impressed," she said, looking him straight in the eyes. "And you're not?" he asked. "I work at a diner," she shrugged. "I meet people who lie for a living. You don't impress me yet." That word, yet, hooked into him like a line into water. As thunder rolled in the distance, they kept talking. Not about business or fame or money, but about favorite books, about what music makes them cry, about the best pancakes in Brooklyn, about old scars no one sees. The rain poured harder, but inside that shelter, something else fell. Their guard. She told him about growing up in Vermont, about her mom's garden. He told her about working through college nights and building an app that changed everything. But he left out the loneliness, and she left out the pain hiding behind her smile. When her shift ended, she started to walk home, 4 blocks and a broken umbrella. Ethan offered to walk with her. So he did, through puddles, neon lights reflecting off the wet pavement. She told jokes. He laughed like he hadn't in years. They passed a street violinist playing under a scaffold. Grace dropped $1 in his case. As they reached her building, a tiny walk-up with peeling paint, she turned to him. "Well, Mr. Bus Shelter, this is me." He hesitated. She smiled softly like she already knew. "I don't give my number out," she said. "Not to strangers, not to millionaires." He blinked. "I never told you." She smirked. "Your face is in Forbes' Genius." He laughed, embarrassed. "But thank you," she added, "for the company, for the honesty, for not trying too hard." And then she did something simple, but it shook him. She touched his hand, just for a moment, warm, grounding, real. "Good night, Ethan." She disappeared behind the door, and with her, the night felt colder. He stood there for a moment, staring at the faded number on the buzzer. No last name, no number, no way to find her, just Grace, and a memory that hit deeper than any business win ever had. The next morning, Ethan returned to the diner. The stool where she sat was empty. No one remembered her. "She just filled in," the manager said. "One night. We don't even have her info." Ethan walked outside. The rain was gone, but the street still glistened. Everything felt too loud, too fast. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "How do you disappear so easily, Grace?" From that moment, A new hunger was born in him, not for success, not for status, but for her. The woman who wasn't impressed, the woman who laughed in the rain, the woman who changed everything in one rainy night. The next morning, Ethan stood outside the diner like a ghost of the night before. Rain had washed the city clean, but his heart felt heavier than ever. He walked in expecting to see her behind the counter, maybe tying an apron, maybe pouring coffee. But she wasn't there. "Excuse me," he asked the manager. "Is Grace working today?" The man frowned. "Grace? She was here last night. Short hair, brown eyes, worked the late shift." The manager scratched his head. "Oh, her. She just filled in. One night deal. Said she was covering for someone's cousin. We paid her cash." Ethan's stomach sank. "No phone number?" "Nope. Not on our books." "Last name?" "She never gave it." Ethan stood frozen. He stared at the booth where they'd shared pie and stories in the rain. It was empty now, like she'd never been there, like she'd never existed. But she had. He could still hear her laugh echoing in his mind. He could still feel the warmth of her fingers brushing his hand. She was real, and she was gone. Back at his penthouse, the city glimmered beneath him. But for the first time, it meant nothing. The view, the wealth, the silence, it all felt hollow. He opened his laptop, searched Grace Waitress Manhattan. Thousands of hits, none of them her. He tried every variation: Grace NYC, Grace Whitmore, Grace plus Diner plus March Rain, Grace Bus Stop, Grace Volunteer, Grace Angel disguised as waitress. He even searched for missing person reports, thinking maybe somehow something terrible had happened. But the results were empty. It became a ritual. He'd come home from meetings, loosen his tie, and type her name into search bars. He searched Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. He joined forums and online detective groups. He created fake accounts just to post inquiries and scan comments anonymously. Each night, he'd go to bed with hope. Each morning, disappointment. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. His friends noticed the change. "You okay, man?" they asked. "Just tired," he lied. They invited him to parties, events, galas. He stopped going. The lights felt too bright, the noise too empty. He didn't care anymore about champagne fountains or rooftop DJs. He only cared about Grace. He hired a private investigator. Then another. He paid them more than he paid his software engineers. "Just find her," he said. "She gave me her first name. Her smile did the rest." They tried everything. Searched DMV records, hospital check-ins, apartment leases. No one fit. One investigator returned after a month. "Sir," he said, "I'm sorry to say this, but she might have given you a fake name. She could have been anyone." "She wasn't," Ethan said, almost growling. "She was honest. She just vanished." He doubled their pay, then tripled it. Still nothing. The tabloids got wind of it. Tech millionaire searching for mystery girl in the rain. $10,000 reward for a smile. They mocked him, said he was losing it. But Ethan didn't care. "Why don't you just let it go?" a friend asked over drinks. "You met her once," his sister said. "People fall in love with illusions all the time." But it wasn't an illusion. She had peeled him like an onion, layer by layer, and hadn't flinched. She didn't care about his suits or his skyline view. She saw him. He remembered her words. "You're used to people being impressed. I'm not." She was the only person who hadn't wanted something from him. Not money, not connections, just time, just conversation, just Ethan. And she gave him something he'd never had: realness. One night he sat alone in his apartment, looking out over the city. Billboards blinked. Cars flowed like blood through veins. He whispered into the silence, "Where did you go, Grace?" He didn't cry. Not yet. But something inside him broke. He wasn't chasing a fantasy. He was chasing the one person who had made him feel like a human again. The one person who'd looked at the man, not the money. And he would not stop. Not until he found her. Not until he knew why she vanished. Because deep down, Ethan didn't believe she left to hurt him. No, it felt like she left to protect something. Something big. Something painful. Something she didn't want him to see. That's when the obsession turned into a mission. He didn't want closure. He wanted her, the laughter, the honesty, the night that never left him. So he kept looking, through every alleyway of the internet, through every corner of the city, through every aching part of his own heart. And though he hadn't seen her again, he still wore the watch he had on that night. He still avoided the bus shelter. He still waited. Because love, true love, doesn't disappear. It hides. It waits. And Ethan believed, so did she. 3 years had passed. Not 3 easy years. Not 3 fast years. But 3 long, aching years that stretched Ethan Cole from the inside out. The man who once built an empire now barely cared about expanding it. He still wore expensive suits, but his eyes were quieter now. He still went to meetings, but his mind wandered. He still slept in a glass penthouse, but most nights he just stared at the ceiling. Grace had not left his mind once. He didn't date, didn't flirt, didn't pretend to move on, because he couldn't. She was the unfinished chapter in a book that wouldn't close. The song stuck in his head that no playlist could replace. The only person who ever made him feel seen. In the time since her disappearance, Ethan had changed in ways even he didn't expect. He stopped attending red carpet events. He sold one of his 3 vacation homes and donated the money to a children's literacy fund. He poured money into shelters, food programs, and mental health nonprofits. Every time he gave, he thought of her. What would Grace do? Who would Grace help? He kept her memory alive through kindness. But a part of him still ached, because he never stopped wondering, why did she leave? Then one quiet morning, it happened. He was sipping black coffee at his kitchen island, reading the news on his tablet, when his housekeeper knocked. "Mr. Cole, there's something odd," she said. She handed him an envelope, plain, no return address, no name, just Ethan, written in blue ink, the kind that fades with time. He opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a photograph. Not just any photo. The photo. Him and Grace. That rainy night. She was laughing, head tilted back, rain dripping from her hair. He was looking at her, eyes soft, lips half smiling, completely unaware someone had taken the picture. He froze. The memory hit him like a wave. The smell of rain, the warmth of her laughter, the feeling of not being alone. He flipped the photo over. Scrawled in that same blue ink were just 10 words. "I didn't forget you. I had to disappear. I'm sorry." Ethan's heart thundered in his chest. His breath caught. His fingers gripped the photo like it might vanish if he blinked. "She's alive," he whispered. She hadn't forgotten him. She hadn't lied. She had left for a reason. But what was it? For hours he sat at the kitchen counter, staring at the photo, looking for something. Anything that might offer a clue. He examined every shadow, every reflection, every background detail. Nothing. Until his eyes caught something small. So small he'd missed it at first. A coffee cup on the table in front of Grace. Not from the diner. It had a tiny logo, a stylized dove inside a circle. It looked hand-drawn, stamped onto the paper cup. He didn't recognize it. It didn't belong to any chain. He zoomed in using his phone's camera. Clearer now. Below the dove were 3 faded words. Shelter, hope, belonging. Something stirred in Ethan's memory. He'd seen those words on a donation receipt 2 years ago. He pulled out his old files, scanned through folders of past contributions. There it was, the Grace Haven Center, a shelter for refugees and immigrants, located in a quiet corner of Brooklyn. He felt chills run down his spine. Could it be a coincidence? Was she connected to the shelter? Was it named after her? Or had she left clues on purpose? He grabbed his coat, the photo tucked safely in his inner pocket. For the first time in 3 years, he felt his heartbeat quicken. Not with sadness, but with hope. The ride to Brooklyn felt longer than it was. Every red light was a curse. Every turn felt like a test. What would he say if he saw her? What if she didn't want to see him? What if she was in danger? What if this clue was all he'd ever get? His fingers trembled as he opened the shelter's front door. The receptionist looked up kindly. "Can I help you?" she asked. Ethan swallowed. "Yes," he said, pulling the photo from his coat. "I'm looking for someone. I think, I think she might be connected to this place. The woman took the photo gently. Her eyes widened. Just a little, but enough. I'm not allowed to give out names, she said slowly. But I can tell you, this shelter changes lives. Sometimes people come here to start over. To heal, Ethan nodded, his voice barely a whisper. I just need to know if she's okay. The woman studied him, not the millionaire, but the man beneath. Finally, she said, some people don't want to be found, sir, but sometimes they want to know they're missed. She handed the photo back and then added, if you're patient, the past has a funny way of catching up. That night, Ethan stood outside the shelter in the dark, leaning against a lamppost, watching, waiting. He didn't know what would happen. He didn't know if she would appear. But for the first time in 3 years, he had something he hadn't had in a long time. Hope. Ethan had spent weeks at the shelter by now. What began as curiosity turned into something else, something deeper. Every box he carried, every meal he served, every smile he gave to a frightened child or tired father, it was all for her. But it also changed him. He met people from every corner of the world, Syrian refugees, African mothers, South American teens, Ukrainian grandmothers, each with a story, each with pain, each with courage. Many of them had been called names, spit on, beaten, blamed for things they had nothing to do with, and yet they smiled, and yet they thanked him, and yet they shared bread and laughter. Ethan had never known pain like theirs, but he felt it now. Their strength, their fears, their pride, and for the first time he wondered, was this why Grace disappeared? It was a gray-skied Thursday afternoon. Cool breeze, clouds low. Ethan was stacking first aid boxes in the back when an older woman tapped him gently on the shoulder. Here, sweetheart, she said kindly, handing him a clipboard and a supply box. We need these taken to the front. He turned to say thank you and froze. There she was. Grace, older, tired, her hair longer, but her eyes, still hers, software strong, searching. Her name tag read, Grace, volunteer supervisor. His heart felt like it had stopped beating. She blinked. Her lips parted in shock. Her hand trembled. Then she smiled. Not the playful smile from the rainy night, not the polite smile of a stranger, but a broken, teary, trembling smile that held 1,000 words inside it. They stared at each other as if time had collapsed. He stepped forward. I found you, he whispered. She nodded, tears filling her eyes. I know. They walked outside together, neither saying anything for a while. The sky above was heavy with unshed rain, but neither of them noticed. They stopped beneath a tree near the sidewalk. No one around, just them. Grace took a deep breath, like she had been holding it for 3 years. I'm sorry, she began, voice shaky. I never meant to disappear. I didn't know how to stay. Ethan swallowed the lump in his throat. Why, Grace? Why did you leave? Her hands trembled. She looked down at her shoes. I was afraid, she said. Not of you, of me. He looked at her, confused. What do you mean? She took a deep breath, then spoke the truth she had buried for most of her life. I grew up in a small town in the South, she said slowly. Real small. The kind where everyone knows your name, your business, and who you hate. She looked up. My parents were white supremacists. Ethan blinked. Shock tightened in his chest. My father ran a militia, she continued, her voice barely more than a whisper. My mother homeschooled me with books full of lies. They taught me that people who didn't look like us were enemies, that love had limits, that bloodlines mattered more than kindness. She paused, eyes misting over. But I knew it was wrong. Even as a kid, I knew it. I read secret books at the library. I talked to people I wasn't supposed to. I listened to music from all over the world. I fell in love with people's stories. Tears slipped down her cheeks. So I ran away, on my 18th birthday. I changed my name, left everything behind. No family, no roots. Just shame. She smiled sadly. And I came here, to New York. I started over. volunteered, studied, gave my life to help people hurt by hate. I wanted to fight everything I was raised to believe. Ethan couldn't speak. He was still holding her words in his heart. She continued, "When I met you that night, I wasn't ready. You were kind, funny, real. I felt something I'd never felt before, and I panicked." "Why?" Ethan asked softly. "Why leave?" She looked at him with red, tired eyes. "Because I thought if you knew where I came from, you'd never look at me the same. I didn't want to infect your world with my past. I didn't want to stain your name with mine. I didn't want to drag you through the ugliness I came from." He stepped closer. "Grace," she shook her head. "My whole life, I've been trying to run away from who I was born to be. And when you looked at me with those eyes, I was scared I'd lose everything again." There was silence, only the sound of wind through branches. Then Ethan spoke. "I didn't fall in love with your past, Grace," he said gently. "I fell in love with your heart." Her eyes filled again. "I don't care who your parents were. I care about who you are now. And you're the bravest woman I've ever known." She shook her head, tears falling. "I'm damaged. You're healed." He reached for her hands. "And you've healed others, too. You changed lives. You saved people. You helped me." She tried to speak, but emotion choked her. He stepped even closer. "I've waited 3 years, Grace, and not a day went by that I didn't think about you. I looked for you not because you were perfect, but because you were real. You were honest. And even when you ran, I never stopped loving you." Her lip trembled. "You still love me," he smiled. "I never stopped." And then, at long last, she stepped forward and fell into his arms, crying, shaking, safe. He held her like she was made of light and memory, like she was a puzzle piece he'd been missing all his life. The truth had been painful, but it hadn't broken them. It had brought them closer, because love, real love, does not fear the truth. It survives it. They stood there beneath the gray sky, their hands clasped like old pages reunited in a book never finished. Ethan looked at her, his voice steady, gentle. "You are not your past," he said. "You're the best person I've ever known." Tears slid down Grace's cheeks again. But these were different. Not tears of guilt, not shame, but release. Because someone finally saw her. Not as a broken product of her roots, but as the woman she had become. Brave, changed, good. He didn't just forgive her history, he honored the fight she waged against it. Over the next few weeks, they began again. But not from the place they left off. From a deeper, quieter place. A place built on truth. They moved slowly. There was no rushing, no flashy dates, no headlines. Just two people, choosing to be present. Ethan would show up to the shelter with her every morning. He'd help stock the shelves. She'd organize check-ins. They shared silent glances across rooms filled with families needing food and hope. At night, they'd walk the long Brooklyn streets, fingers grazing, talking, healing. They cooked together in her tiny studio apartment, not in his penthouse. She taught him how to boil pasta without breaking it. He made her laugh, trying to flip pancakes, and failing. They sat on the floor eating by candlelight when the bulb blew out. They laughed, they cried, they danced to old Billie Holiday songs on the radio. Slow, no steps, just swaying, just being. Grace told him everything now. About the names she was called growing up if she so much as smiled at someone different. About the fear of running away at 18 with no money and no one. About the nightmares that still woke her sometimes. The sounds of hate, the images of pain. Ethan listened, and he told her his side. How he kept her memory like a flickering candle in the dark. How he turned down models, actresses, all because none of them made him feel home like she did. How he searched databases, paid investigators, put out rewards, and how every day he feared she was gone forever. Grace wept softly when he told her that, but she smiled too, because she finally knew. She mattered. She always had. Their love wasn't fast. It wasn't easy. It was better. It was earned. It was honest. It was safe. The kind of love that made silence feel full. The kind that didn't need filters or masks. The kind where you let someone see the bruises. And they kissed them, not ignored them. But love, true love, is always tested. The world noticed Ethan and Grace again. After all, he was a millionaire. And his story, Ethan Cole finally finds the mystery woman from that viral photo, became headline news. At first it was sweet, fairy tale stuff, modern-day Cinderella, love in the rain. But then the vultures came. They dug. They found pieces of Grace's past, not her, but her parents. Old photos, marches, names, and soon the internet lit up with fire. He's dating a white supremacist's daughter? How do we know she's changed? Fake charity worker, trust fund guilt trip, blogs, comment sections, tabloids. People who had never known her wrote entire articles about her soul. And Grace saw it. She saw it all. Old wounds reopened. Comments felt like knives. But this time, she didn't flinch. She didn't run, didn't hide, didn't disappear. She looked at Ethan one night, holding his hand across the table. "I'm not ashamed anymore," she whispered. "I won't apologize for being someone I fought to stop being." He squeezed her hand. "You don't have to," he said. "You're not them." The next morning, Grace wrote a post. Just a quiet, personal letter. She posted it on her own page. Not for likes, not for fame, but for freedom. "Yes, I was born into hate, but I didn't stay there. Yes, my parents were white supremacists. But I left. I walked away. I rebuilt myself from ashes. I have spent every day since trying to undo what they taught. Not with speeches, with love, with service, with open hands to strangers. If you want to judge me by blood, I can't stop you. But I ask, judge me by what I chose to be." That post went viral, but not with hate, with hope. People wrote back. A man from Georgia. "My dad was a Klan member. I left at 20. You're not alone." A mother from Minnesota. "My daughter married a refugee. I lost friends, but I gained a son." A black woman from Texas. "My heart broke reading this. But I believe you. I see the good." Grace cried reading every message. Because maybe, just maybe, the world was ready for something more powerful than blame. Redemption. And through it all, Ethan stayed beside her. Not as a hero, not as a savior, as a partner, as a man who knew that true love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other, especially when it's hard. The room was silent. Cameras clicked. Lights flashed. But Ethan didn't care about the cameras. He didn't care about the lights. He only cared about the woman standing beside him. Grace. She stood straight, her shoulders calm. A soft smile touched her lips. Her fingers curled gently around Ethan's. It had taken 3 years to find her, weeks to rebuild what they lost. And now, they were telling their truth. Ethan stepped up to the podium. He looked around the room. Reporters, critics, supporters. Some came to find flaws. Some came to find inspiration. All of them came with questions. He took a deep breath, then spoke. "We live in a world that judges people too quickly," he said, voice clear and strong. "Grace taught me something. Something I wish I'd known sooner." He glanced at her. "Where you come from does not define who you choose to become." Gasps filled the room, not from shock, but from the weight of that truth, from its simplicity, its courage. Grace stepped forward, not as a victim, not as a symbol, as a woman with a voice. "I was born into hate," she said gently, "but I left it. I broke the cycle. Not everyone gets to choose their beginning, but we all get to choose our becoming." The room was silent. No flashing cameras now, just hearts listening. Their story went viral. Again. But this time, it wasn't a scandal. It was a spark. Letters flooded in from every corner of America, from a young man in Kentucky. "I was raised to hate. I'm trying to unlearn it. Thank you for showing me I'm not alone." From a grandmother in Oregon. "I never thought I'd forgive my own past. You've given me the courage to try." From a high school student in Detroit. "My dad says people can't change, but you proved him wrong." They read every letter, cried over most, laughed at the doodles from kids, held hands through the painful ones, the ones that told stories like Grace's. But the message was clear. People were hungry for something more than anger, more than blame. They were hungry for healing, for the possibility of change, for grace. 1 year later, on a quiet street in Brooklyn, they opened the doors of something new. The Grace Project, a community center. But more than that, it was a safe space, a place for people running from hate, a place for those leaving extremist families, abusive ideologies, toxic beliefs, a place to begin again. They offered counseling, literacy classes, job training, art therapy, story circles, where people told their truths no matter how messy. Walls once built from fear came down with tears, one conversation at a time. One young man, barely 21, arrived with a Confederate flag tattoo across his chest. By the end of his 6 months, he was volunteering full-time, sleeves rolled down, not to hide, but to remind himself how far he'd come. A single mother from a cult found a new family there. An immigrant teenager once bullied for her hijab now taught poetry to younger kids. The Grace Project didn't fix the world, but it started to heal it. Reporters kept asking for interviews. Ethan and Grace declined most of them. They weren't doing it for the attention. They were doing it for the people who once stood where Grace had, lost, ashamed, scared to believe in their own goodness. And then, one spring afternoon, they were married. No cameras, no designer gowns, no headlines. Just a garden behind the center, a few folding chairs, a circle of mismatched guests, refugees, ex-convicts, foster kids, retired teachers, and volunteers. People who had nothing but gave everything. Grace wore a simple ivory dress. Ethan wore a soft gray suit. They exchanged vows through quiet tears. "You found me when I couldn't find myself," Grace whispered. "You saved me by letting me love you," Ethan replied. They kissed. Laughter bubbled around them. Someone strummed a guitar. A child released balloons. An older woman passed around slices of homemade cake. It was perfect, because it was real. That night, as they walked hand in hand down the Brooklyn streets where it all began, Grace leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder. The sky was clear. The moon glowed silver. And the world, for a moment, felt still. "I never thought I'd deserve this," she said softly. Ethan smiled. "Everyone deserves grace," he replied. "Even Grace herself." Their story didn't end with a kiss. It lived on in every person they helped, in every letter they received, in every life that chose love over hate, kindness over anger, healing over hiding. Because at the end of it all, this story wasn't just about romance. It was about redemption, about choice, about the truth that even in a society stained by prejudice, people can change, people can heal, people can love. And love, real, messy, brave love, is stronger than hate.